Convoy PQ17, laden with crucial war supplies for the Russian army, departed Iceland under the watchful eyes of its escort fleet. As the convoy sailed on, the Tirpitz and her formidable entourage lay in wait, poised to unleash devastation in a meticulously planned operation dubbed Night's Move. This confrontation would go down in history as one of the most disastrous and controversial episodes of the Arctic convoys, a story of miscalculation and the harsh realities of naval warfare. The decisions made in the war rooms of London and Berlin would determine the fate of thousands of lives in the icy northern waters as the convoy sailed towards its tragic fate. This is the harrowing story of Convoy PQ17. The Germans feared an Allied invasion of Norway and wanted to stifle the flow of war supplies to Stalin's Red Army. As a result, in early 1942, the German General Staff began to build up its air and naval assets by transferring the new battleship Tirpitz from the Baltic to Trondheim, Norway. She was the sister ship of the now famous Bismarck and was regarded as the Kriegsmarine's most modern and powerful warship. Beginning in May, the Tirpitz and two heavy cruisers, accompanied by a destroyer screen, would be deployed against Russia-bound convoys. The German Navy intended to launch an attack on the passing convoy from Altenfjord in Norway. This operation, codenamed Night's Move, would be carried out in collaboration with the Luftwaffe and U-boat forces. When Adolf Hitler read this ambitious plan, he stated that the fleet could indeed sortie, but only if it had overwhelming superiority. After the sinking of the Bismarck and the Graf Spee fiasco, he was not taking any chances with his precious battleships. Convoy PQ17, made up of 35 freighters and tankers, departed Iceland on June 27, 1942. It had a close escort of 6 destroyers, 4 corvettes, 2 anti-aircraft vessels, and 2 submarines. Under the command of Rear Admiral Lewis Hamilton, there would be a distant cover group of 2 British and 2 American heavy cruisers, along with their destroyer screens, hovering just out of sight, where they would be within easy reach. On July 1st, U-456 made the first sighting of Convoy PQ-17. The initial stages of Operation Night's Move were implemented. The Kriegsmarine concentrated their scattered ships at Altenfjord at the northernmost tip of Norway, with orders to be ready to strike at 3 hours' notice. They assembled a wolf pack of U-boats codenamed Ice Devils and had them take up a patrol line across the convoy's line of advance. Air Fleet 5, which consists of 264 aircraft, was placed on full alert. From that point on, Luftwaffe reconnaissance planes were constantly shadowing the convoy. On the morning of July 3rd, with the weather overcast and visibility poor, a single bomber flew beneath the cloud cover, spotted PQ-17, and launched his attack. The torpedo passed between 2 vessels on the outside row before striking the lead ship in the next row, the Liberty ship Christopher Newport. She was struck dead center, and within minutes, her machinery spaces flooded, bringing her to a stop. With no hope of repairing the engines, her crew abandoned her. Now blooded by its first loss, Convoy PQ-17 plodded on. The Luftwaffe planes attacked in force the next morning at 8 a.m., with 23 Heinkel 111Ts each carrying 2 torpedoes and supported by Ju-88s used in the dive bomber role. The Germans struck 3 ships: the Soviet tanker Azerbaijan, the American Liberty ship William Hooper, and the British freighter Navarino. Azerbaijan signaled that her fires were under control and that she was sufficiently repaired to keep up with the convoy, but the 2 freighters were beyond salvage and were scuttled. In Whitehall, First Sea Lord Admiral Dudley Pound, who was aware of Operation Night's Move from intelligence, was concerned about the lack of information about the German ship's location. Admiral Pound's intelligence department was unable to state definitively whether Tirpitz was still at anchor or at sea. Commander Denning, head of naval intelligence, informed Admiral Pound that if the Tirpitz had sailed, his agents in the Norwegian underground would have alerted him. Pound finally asked, "Can you assure me that Tirpitz is still in Altenfjord?" Denning answered that he was confident she was, but he could not give an unequivocal answer. If Tirpitz came across the convoy while it was still in formation, she could sink every single one of them. It would be like shooting fish in a barrel. Because the German fleet could not be located with certainty, Admiral Pound assumed the worst-case scenario, that they were already at sea. Rather than delegating the decision to the commanders on the scene, he believed that his only option was clear, despite the fact that he had no evidence that Tirpitz was actually at sea. "The convoy is to scatter," he announced. "They will have to make their way to Russia independently." When Admiral Hamilton and the cruiser covering force received the order to withdraw, he assumed that the Admiralty in London had information he was unaware of. He concluded that such a drastic order could only indicate that the Tirpitz was bearing down on them just over the horizon. He ordered the destroyers with the convoy to join him on his westward withdrawal to Iceland. The merchant vessel's crew let out cheers as the warships pulled away, assuming the destroyers were about to engage in a major battle, unaware that they were being abandoned to their fate. The patrolling German aircraft could not believe what was happening. The U-boat captains looked on in disbelief as they reported the scattering of the convoy. When morning air patrols revealed that there were no Allied heavy ships in the operating area, Hitler gave his approval for Operation Knight's Move to proceed. By 2:30 a.m. on July 5th, Tirpitz, Hipper, and Scheer, along with their destroyer screen, were pounding northeast towards the scattered and helpless freighters. At the same time, the Luftwaffe's 5th Air Force flew off everything that could help with the attack, while the Ice Devils closed in to take advantage of the easy pickings. A sighting report from 2 Allied submarines patrolling off the North Cape was intercepted around 5 p.m. Kriegsmarine headquarters in Kiel were now aware that their fleet had been discovered. Meanwhile, the Luftwaffe and U-boats had a field day hunting down and sinking the individual ships which now lacked protection. 14 ships were sunk within 24 hours of the scattering, the largest single-day ship loss on the high seas for either side during World War II. With the U-boats and aircraft performing so well, it seemed pointless to expose the surface fleet to a possible submarine attack, so the Kriegsmarine Commander-in-Chief, Admiral Erich Raeder, canceled Knight's Move around 10 p.m. Tirpitz reluctantly reversed course and returned to Norway. 7 more merchant ships were sunk in the following 5 days. Only 11 of the 35 merchant vessels reached Archangel in Russia. Aside from 150,000 tons of shipping, nearly 3,300 trucks, 200 aircraft, 435 tanks, and 99,000 tons of supplies and ammunition were also lost. The only loss for the Germans was 5 aircraft. As the Germans celebrated their victory, Goebbels took full advantage of the propaganda opportunity, scattering iron crosses like confetti. Pound's decision had disregarded the great danger of U-boat and aircraft attacks against scattered and defenseless merchant ships. The Russians were harsh in their condemnation of Pound's actions. After all, it was their cargo that was lost. In London, Soviet Ambassador Ivan Maysky demanded answers. The House of Commons conducted an investigation during which Admiral Pound admitted making the decision to scatter the convoy. But there was a problem assigning blame to Pound. The First Sea Lord was not only a military position, but also a political one. Pound was too high to be sacrificed. Hamilton, whose only offense had been to follow orders, would have to take the bullet for his boss. He was transferred to the Mediterranean and assigned a desk job. Admiral Ernest King, the U.S. Chief of Naval Operations, who despised the British, took advantage of the fiasco to transfer as many U.S. ships as he could to the Pacific Fleet. Life would not be kind to Dudley Pound. Within a year, he would pass away with a brain tumor.
If you liked this video, there are many similar high-quality videos on my channel.